Hello, my name is Robin Brewer, and in this video, I will share about collaborative work that I co-led with Amanda Lazar, Hernisa Kacorri, and students at the University of Maryland and the University of Michigan. In this work, our goal was to investigate how content authored by people with dementia affects attitudes towards dementia. Dementia is a term that refers to a group of cognitive disabilities that affect memory and reasoning in different ways due to damage to one's brain cells. However, dementia is a highly stigmatized disability and is often associated with decline and loss, with media portraying dementia as something to prevent without recognizing how people with dementia exist in the world. For example, as creators and expressive beings. We highlight such a negative connotation of dementia as it impacts how we as researchers, developers, and designers create new technologies and engage with people with dementia. These perceptions manifest as technologies that don't do well at supporting personhood, and stigmatized perceptions towards dementia impact how we interact in person. As such, many researchers have designed interventions to increase exposure to dementia. Much of this literature can be categorized into three categories: fictional vignettes to depict biographies of people with dementia, in-person interactions to increase exposure to people with dementia, and interventions to expose people to what it may feel like to live with dementia. Yet there's little work on the effects of different types of media on one's perceptions towards dementia. As such, our primary research question was what type of media affects people's understanding of and attitudes towards dementia. Motivated by prior work, we designed an experiment to expose college students to different forms of content about dementia, varying in media format, presented either by audio or text, and varying in the content producer, someone with dementia or someone without dementia. Content created by people with dementia was drawn from the Dementia Diaries website, which is a project that supports people with dementia creating and sharing audio blogs about their dementia experiences. In our study, participants engaged in 2 sessions with a researcher. In the first session, participants completed a survey with 4 validated scales related to attitudes and understanding of dementia and aging. During this session, they were randomly assigned to one of 4 groups: 1, listening to a blog post authored by someone with dementia; 2, reading a transcript of a blog post authored by someone with dementia; 3, reading a news article that was not authored by someone with dementia; and 4, a control group with no additional exposure. After 2 weeks, we asked participants to take the survey with the 4 scales again and conducted interviews with them about their thoughts on dementia, the media they were exposed to, and we discussed the media that they were not exposed to. We recruited 139 college students between the University of Michigan and the University of Maryland, of which 123 students passed our quality control measures and were compensated either $20 after the second session or with course credit. Almost half of the participants reported having had some past experience with people with dementia, and this was taken from the demographic survey that they completed prior to session 1. Yet when asked to explain further in the interviews, most spoke of limited interaction with people with dementia, such as not seeing grandparents with dementia often. And beyond brief exposure to dementia with their family experiences or in psychology or health-related courses, participants had very little knowledge of dementia, to the extent that some had difficulty completing the scales at the beginning of the study and expressed that they would have to intentionally, quote, seek it out, with it referring to information about dementia. In session 1 interviews, participants described how when they were exposed to dementia through news, the media, or coursework, it was often through a medical lens. For example, they were exposed to content about biological changes in the brain. There was little exposure to the lived experience of dementia. For example, P72 described how dementia is not really talked about much, and that what they hear about it comes from people who don't have it or from medical professionals or TV documentaries. So they've never actually thought about the person or persons with dementia or Alzheimer's thoughts. And while we hypothesized exposure to the varying forms of media would affect attitudes and understanding of dementia, we found that there were changes across all conditions, including the control condition. For example, this shows pre and post differences on the scale that measures positive attitudes towards dementia across the control, news articles, text diaries, and audio diaries conditions, and shows that participants increased their positive attitudes across each condition. And this suggests that even discussions about dementia, so thinking the control group, could positively affect attitudes. However, we did find that these differences were more pronounced with the text and audio diary groups, both of which were groups that included content authored by people with dementia. Also, participants exposed to the text and audio groups had fewer negative attitudes towards dementia after the 2-week break, and answering the survey questions again in session 2. After completing the survey measures in session 2, we interviewed participants and asked them to describe their reactions to dementia-related content that they were exposed to. Participants described how listening to and reading the dementia diaries helped them understand the diversity of the lived experiences of people with dementia. For example, participant 120 acknowledged that different people have different responses to dementia. Similarly, participant 39 commented on dementia as a spectrum, saying, you kind of see how people with dementia, how their lives are, and when people think about dementia, I think it gets grouped into one thing, but understanding that each person with dementia has their own case and their own special needs. Overall, reading and listening to content authored by people with dementia was a more personal and nuanced account of a lived experience. For example, participant 10 described how listening to content authored by someone with dementia was more humanizing, saying, I think it was useful to really learn a little bit more about dementia, especially seeing into personal stories, seeing that people with dementia can actually remember some of their experiences that they went through, and they can write about it, their feelings and what they thought about it, and show frustration that they feel. So I think it really helps show people how they actually are as a person and not like, a person with dementia. So these are just a brief overview of our findings. There are additional findings in the paper, but I would like to highlight 3 key takeaways. First, we recommend designing better ways to support people with dementia as content producers, in contrast to media that focuses on a highly medical perspective of dementia, and doing so primarily from medical professionals, caregivers, or other stakeholders. Such an approach increases the visibility of dementia, giving people with dementia a voice about their own condition. Second, we found that audio was impactful. Participants spoke at length on the emotional cues from the audio diaries and their impact on perceptions towards dementia. And while we focused on audio in this study, we encourage researchers to consider interventions to expose people to dementia and other disabilities that include a range of verbal and nonverbal cues, such as video or perhaps virtual reality experiences. And lastly, we find that attitudinal changes can occur beyond synchronous in-person context, and sharing content authored by people with dementia can supplement curricular design intended to change attitudes towards disability in a short time period. Similar types of interventions can be shared with researchers new to dementia, aging, or disability before interacting with people with dementia to counterbalance any negative media and any negative perceptions they may have when entering this research space. Thank you for your time.